Hello! In this module, we're going to be learning about the grammar of our logical language. We've been using the logical language, but we haven't actually explicitly said what the grammar rules are for the language, so that's what we're going to learn about. In this video in particular, we'll learn the rules, and then in another video, we'll learn how to analyze, how to apply the rules, basically. Okay, so first of all, we want to review our symbols just so we know what they are. So we have capital letters from P to Z, and those are the sentence letters. Those are atomic because they do not contain, they're sentences and they don't contain other sentences as parts. Then we have the tilde or the negation sign. We have the arrow or the conditional. We have the wedge or conjunction. We have the V or disjunction. We have the double arrow or biconditional. And we have the parentheses. And actually it's going to turn out, as surprising as this may seem, a bunch of this video is going to have to do with how parentheses work. So, here are the rules for the language. These rules say which things are sentences and which things aren't. So, every sentence letter is a sentence. So, capital letter from P to Z, it's a sentence. If you have a sentence already, if circle is a sentence, and you put a negation on the front of it, then you have a new sentence. Yep, that's right. You get the it is not the case that, whatever the original sentence said. So if the original sentence was P, then not P is a sentence. If the original sentence was not P, then not P is a sentence. And if you have two sentences, so circle and square or box are sentences, then the following are sentences. Parenthesis, circle, arrow, square, parenthesis, parenthesis, circle, double arrow, square, parenthesis, parenthesis, circle, wedge, square, parenthesis is a sentence, and finally parenthesis, circle, V, square, parenthesis is a sentence. So if you have any two sentences, you can put any of those symbols between them, and you put parentheses around them, then you get another sentence. And lastly, nothing else is a sentence. Now there's something very strange about these rules if we consider P arrow Q. According to these rules, P arrow Q is not a sentence. Why? Our rules say, well, if you write down parenthesis, sentence, arrow, sentence, parenthesis, then you get a sentence. But if you don't do that, then you don't have a sentence. And the problem with P arrow Q is that P arrow Q is missing parentheses. So it's not a sentence according to these rules. Now that's kind of odd. We've been treating it as if it was. And what's the point of these parentheses anyway? Well, we're going to see that in fact we're going to be able to treat it as sort of informal or an abbreviated sentence, but we need to also understand sort of how we do that and why does the language have parentheses in the first place. So consider the sentence, enraged cow injures farmer with axe. So this is grammatically ambiguous. Why? Well, the question is, how does the with axe work? Is it that the cow used an axe to enrage so that we got this cow and it injures the farmer? How is the axe involved? Is the axe something that the farmer happened to have while being injured by the cow? Or is it the cow used the axe to injure the farmer? Well, I mean, there's a fairly obvious reading, which is that the cow wasn't using the axe, but the sentence is funny because it leaves open that possibility that no, actually, the cow was using an axe. Okay, so it's ambiguous because what does with axe modify? Does it modify enraged cow or does it modify farmer? The sentence can be read either way. Well, now look at this sentence. Bob is tall, or Sarah is happy, and Michael is wise. This sentence is also ambiguous. It could be a disjunction of, like this, either Bob is tall, or Sarah is happy and Michael is wise. Or instead, it could be a conjunction of, it's both the case that, on the one hand, Bob is tall or Sarah is happy, and also, Michael is wise. To see that these sentences do not say the same thing, consider Michael is wise. The second reading, when it's a conjunction, tells us, yes, indeed, Michael is wise. But the first sentence doesn't require that Michael be wise. It could be that Bob is tall, in which case that disjunction is true, and it's not the case that Sarah is happy, and it's not the case that Michael is wise. So they say different things, and the original English sentence is ambiguous. So we don't want grammatical ambiguity in our language. We want our sentences to have only one reading. And that means there's only one way they can be built up using the rules, and we need parentheses for that. Okay, now, we're going to have this notion in analyzing our sentences of a main connective. And we need to, what makes our sentences not ambiguous is that each sentence has only one main connective. In English, there are ambiguities because a given sentence can have multiple main connectives. That's what makes them ambiguous. So let's look at some examples first before I tell you what a main connective is, or give it a general definition. So we have the sentence negation P. The main connective is the tilde, and the reason why is, well, how did we form not P? We took P and added the negation to it. Okay. Now consider negation P. What's the main connective? It's the second, it's the leftmost negation. There are two negation symbols there, and the main connective is the leftmost one. Why? Well, because we took the sentence not P and added the negation to it to get the sentence not P. Okay, how about P arrow Q? Here the main connective is the arrow. Why? Well, because we took the sentence P and we took the sentence Q, we put the arrow in between them, put the parentheses around it, and built P arrow Q. How about not P arrow Q? Here the main connective is the negation. Why? Well, because we took the conditional sentence P arrow Q with its parentheses, and to form the current sentence, we added the negation to the conditional. Finally, how about this? Negation P arrow Q, where the negation is on the P inside of the parentheses. In this case, the main connective is the arrow. Why is that? We took two sentences, negation P is the first sentence, Q is the second, and we put the arrow in between them and the parentheses around it to build this sentence. Okay, so what then is the definition of a main connective? It's the connective that was last added in building it up, and that's what we saw in each of those cases. When you build a sentence from atomic, when you have a complex sentence, you build it up from atomic sentences step by step, and the main connective is the whatever was added last in that process of building up the whole thing. So if the box is anything but a negation, then you took two sentences and you put the symbol, the V or the disjunction, the V or the wedge, the single arrow, the double arrow between the two sentences. That's what makes it the main connective. If it's just a negation, then you added it to one other sentence. So each sentence of the logical language has only one main connective. Some English sentences have multiple main connectives. Those are ambiguous sentences. But because our sentences have only one main connective, there's no ambiguity in any of them. Now, one way to tell when you're looking at a sentence, which connective is the main connective, well, take it away, and you should be left with only sentences. If you're left with not sentences, then it wasn't the main connective. And we'll be applying that test later on in the next video. But the key thing is that each sentence has only one main connective. The main connective is what was added last to build the sentence. And then the main connective tells you what kind of sentence is it. Is it a biconditional, a conditional, a conjunction, a disjunction, or negation? Well, what kind of symbol was added last, that's what kind of sentence the sentence is. If a conditional was added last to build a sentence, it's a conditional sentence. Okay, so in this video, I've told you what the rules for the grammatical rules for our language is. What are the rules by which we form sentences? And we talked about why we have the rules a little bit. We have the rules because we want our language, why the rules are as they are. We want our language to be grammatically unambiguous. We want each sentence to only have one main connective. And we talked about the notion of what a main connective is a little bit. So, good. But now we need to understand how parentheses work a little bit more, because we're going to have some conventions for, okay, when can you get rid of parentheses when you don't need them, right? Because that's what we've been doing all along, and so we need to sort of, in retrospect, make sense of that, what we've been doing. So that's what I'll talk about in the next video.